From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tomas Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tomas Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist with the current newspapers. I refer to you as Tomas because presumably that's what you were called during your visit to Cuba.
No, some people down there called me El Presidente.
No, I seriously doubt that.
No, it was a terrific trip. I went with the Smithsonian group, people to people. I learned an incredible amount about what I thought I knew about Cuba was just so out of date, out of touch, and wrong.
We'll talk more about that in a minute, but we do have breaking news that we need to discuss first, and we do have a guest in the studio who may or may not want to comment on the breaking news. She is Alison Silberberg, Vice Mayor of Alexandria. She is a candidate for Mayor of Alexandria. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kojo. It's an honor to be with you and Tom. Thank you.
Breaking news, of course, is that 6 Baltimore police officers have been charged with several counts, including one who was charged with second-degree murder. That, of course, happened in the high-profile death of Freddie Gray, who died from injuries suffered in police custody. The state's attorney there is Marilyn Mosby. She said there was no reason to charge him in the first place because the knife he was allegedly carrying in his pocket was not a violation of the law at all.
It's not a switchblade.
Right. And as I said, these charges include second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, assault, failure to render aid, and other charges. Warrants have been issued for the officer's arrest. Obviously, this has happened fairly quickly.
And yes, and well, people, I don't know how quickly, but people were quite worried about what was going to happen. And this is a new state's attorney. It clearly lays out that there was a violation of police procedures and how this gentleman, Freddie Gray, was put into leg irons and handcuffs. How they did not respond to the obvious need for medical attention. From the beginning, from the fact that they no reason to arrest to the mistreatment to his death. It's just a very strong statement. What does it mean for Baltimore in the demonstrations that will occur? Given these charges, I could see that the demonstrations could grow. The question is, will the police be able to contain them? The detention now will just be terrible.
Well, it also could have the effect, I think, of tamping down some of the anger being demonstrated by the
people hope.
I know that's the hope that there is, because it would appear that there has been some speedy action taken to see, not only to investigate, but to charge these officers. And so obviously the administration of justice in Baltimore, according to the state's attorney, is swift at this point. We'll have to see what happens there. I don't know if you care to comment on this at all, Alison Silberberg. I mean, the world has been watching.
Right. The world is watching. And I think that all of us want to wait and, see what's going to happen with regard to these charges, a full accounting of what has happened to Mr. Gray. And certainly all of our hearts and thoughts go to the family of Mr. Gray. And we need to know what happened. We need to know the truth. And then beyond that, this is obviously an ongoing investigation. But as far as the violence, it's been, people are upset, but we need to provide, as far as the community goes, I think in all our communities throughout the nation, we need to have careful policing, of course. And we also have to have programs in place on an ongoing basis that provide hope, job training, education, and affordable housing.
You mentioned police. The police union in Maryland is already arguing that this state's attorney should remove herself from the case because it sees a conflict of interest. I don't know if that's because her husband happens to be a member of the Baltimore City Council, who has been fairly outspoken on this issue so far, but we'll have to see what happens with that. There's obviously going to be a pushback from the police union in the state of Maryland.
And Kojo, if I might add,
sure.
We need a full accounting from the police as well as to the whole story and the witnesses, etc. So there are many sides of this story, and this is unfolding as we speak. So
Yeah,
it's hard to comment.
while you were away, Tom, we did a show about the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights in the state of Maryland, which has come up during the course of this issue. We'll get to this issue some more when we talk later in the broadcast with Kumar Bharve. He's a member of the Maryland House of Delegates who is running for the U.S. House of Representatives, who I'm sure will have something to say on this issue. We mentioned earlier that Tom Sherwood has just returned from Cuba. How did you get down there, given that there are still travel restrictions in place? Where did this tour take you on the island? Did you have a translator? Were you able to talk to Cubans and explore on your own? Presumably you had your reporters on unofficially, at least people about the changes there. What's the feeling toward the U.S.? What did they think of you hailing from Washington, D.C.? Go ahead. You got 30 seconds.
I was stunned by my absence of knowledge about Cuba. I didn't even realize how big geographically it is. I mean, it's 700 miles long and it's 100 miles wide at some point. I was not aware. We had a great off-the-record briefing with the embassy there, the interest section. It's not an embassy yet. The abject poverty, but people, people make, if you're a surgeon or if you're a waiter in a
same
hotel,
salary,
$20 a month, 20 American dollars a month. Doctors who drive cabs to make extra money. We went out into to the Botanic Garden in Cienfuegos, the city of 100 fires. We went to Trinidad. We went to the museum at the Bay of Pigs. We had just extraordinary conversation about this place that is so on the verge of significant change. People want change in Cuba, but they don't want another American takeover.
Which is what they had under the regime that preceded all of this, the Batista regime. And of course, they will, if and when relations are normalized and both countries have embassies there, tourism to Cuba will likely increase very significantly. You in your column suggested that people should go as soon as possible before it changes too much.
Well, yes, but it's changing every moment. It's changing. Even the Cuban nationals who go and just going through the Havana airport and seeing people come in from other places, including in Miami, and they just look like they're moving whole Costco stores into this, because the embargo, the ban is actually quite porous. I refer to it as a coral reef, because there are any number of ways you can go. You simply can't go on a Caribbean vacation where you're going to sit on the beach and drink mojitos or all those Cuba Libre drinks and all that. But we went people to people and met people and talked to ordinary citizens and people in positions. You just can't go as a tourist, but you can go for education reasons. You can go for public policy reasons, science reasons. There are many ways you can go if you go leave your tourist hat at home.
And more from Tom Sherwood about that, I'm sure, in your column in the current newspaper. As we said, our guest is Allison Silberberg. She is the Vice Mayor of Alexandria. She's a candidate for Mayor of Alexandria. If you have questions or comments for Allison Silberberg, give us a call at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream of this conversation there, and ask a question or make a comment. You are currently, as I said, Vice Mayor of Alexandria. You were formerly a member of the Alexandria City Council. The incumbent mayor of Alexandria, William Ewell, is running for a fifth time. He's run unopposed since 2003, but now he's got two opponents, of which obviously you are one. What prompted you to run?
Well, many things, but let me emphasize that I'm still on the city council.
This is true.
Okay,
you're also vice mayor.
I am the vice mayor of the
What
city
does
council.
that mean, vice
Mayor
mayor?
of vice. No,
No, that's such that I won't go with that. What does the vice mayor do?
Well, first of all, I ran for city council, and of the six of us, it's the six plus the mayor, and of the six of us of the council members, the person who gets the most votes traditionally, historically, becomes the vice mayor. And that's how I became the vice mayor.
Do you run the council meetings?
I got the most votes. Well, if the mayor steps out or if he's absent or out of town, yes, I will step in.
You get more money?
It has nothing to do with money.
The vice
mayor. In terms of the salary?
Yes.
Right.
No, I make the same amount as the other five. And
how much is that?
The mayor makes a little bit more. My annual salary is about $27,500 for that role, and the mayor's is 3 to 5,000 more, something like that.
In the past 8 years, the city's expenses have exceeded revenue, and as a result, tax bills have gone up for the average taxpayer by around $500. Residents of Alexandria are not happy about that. What would you do as mayor to get the budget in order?
Okay. Well, first of all, I just realized I didn't answer your other question.
About why you're running?
Yes. May I go back to that?
Please do.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not running against the mayor, nor am I running against the former mayor. Rather, I'm running for my vision, and I honor their service. I've been honored to serve on the council, and it's a great city, Alexandria, but I believe we can do even better. There are three main things that I have been focusing on and sharing with people. One, I believe we need to build thoughtful, appropriate development that's responsible, that fits in, that's to scale, and that will protect our neighborhoods and our quality of life. That's everywhere from Old Town to the West End and everything in between. I think protecting our neighborhoods is key. Second, the growing debt, which is to your question. In the past decade, our debt has grown exponentially. From 2003 to 2013, it went from 140 million to 530 million. Our current debt service or interest on the debt is about 63 or 64 million this year, as we are about to sign off on our budget in the next week or so. We've had a structural imbalance between revenues and expenditures for the last 8 years, and we have serious economic challenges. The city is doing well, and we have a AAA bond rating, and I will always work to maintain that, of course. But I think we're going to have to pull together as a community and discuss how we're going to face this. And we're going to need more. We need to grow the commercial tax base, but do it in a balanced way. We also need to diversify our economy so we're not so tied to the ups and downs of the federal government. We need to bring in more entrepreneurship. And we just successfully brought in the National Science Foundation, which we're all very excited about. But we also need to bring in others who are going to do work in whether it's high tech, medical research, science, or any entrepreneurship.
What's the third corner of this triangle of issues?
Thank you. The third is we need to rebuild the people's trust. We need more openness and transparency at City Hall. We need to have fewer executive sessions. We need to, when people come and take their time to come and speak to us at council, they need to get the respect they deserve. As far as executive sessions, the BRAC building was discussed in executive session and was decided upon. So there's no accountability. There's no vote. That building, we should have gotten the community input about it. We should have had media scrutiny. And the last point I just make really fast, Kojo, is that over the next 20 years, we're going to lose about $60 million because it's off the tax rolls. So that's just 20 years worth. And that's money that our city could obviously really use. So I think that it needed media scrutiny. It needed civic engagement. And so I think that we need more, we need to open those doors.
For those of our listeners who don't know or have forgotten, BRAC is the base realignment and closure, and the BRAC building is the site BRAC 133 in Alexandria, which we'll be discussing later. Here's Tom Show.
I spoke with Michael Lee Pope, and we were talking about the Potomac Navy Yard Metro stop. In terms of limiting development so that Alexandria doesn't lose its character and you can get out of debt. Where are you on the Potomac Yard Metro development? Seems like a major decision. I have to say, when the Redskin Stadium was proposed for that site, it was nothing there virtually. And people say, oh, we don't want all that traffic on a Sunday. Now you have all that traffic 7 days a week, almost 14 hours a day. You were hoping to have now a metro station there. How is Alexandria going to afford that? It was only promised new development. Where do you stand on it? Are you going to build it?
Well, the whole council will have a public hearing in May, and then we will vote on May 20th.
Where are you on it?
Well, I want to hear from the community.
You don't have an opinion
Well,
now?
I do have an opinion. I'm going to, thanks.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Tom. That's
It's,
all right. Yeah, you're
pushing
good.
you to
Yeah,
get.
you're good.
I
I
know.
want to give you a straight. So let me just explain a couple of things. Of course, I am a big supporter of mass transit and getting people out of their cars, and we need to have multimodal transportation, meaning different ways of getting about besides our cars. I completely support that. The Potomac Yard Metro stop, which has been discussed for many years, actually, it was discussed in the late 90s. The developer had offered $25 million to pay for the whole thing, as I understand it, in the late 90s. And that didn't happen. I'm not sure why. But now we're faced with Potomac, three options: no build, Plan A or Plan B. And we have been given, and it's on the city's website, different scenarios about the economic development that would come in if we don't build anything, if we have Plan A or Plan B. The difference is that Plan A would cost $209 million. Plan B would be $268 million. And they're about 500 feet apart. So Plan A is in more of the residential area, and then 500 feet down where the Target store is, that's the commercial zone, and that would be Plan B. Now, originally, it is in writing that the developer was going to chip in, has a commitment to chip in about $49 million, $10 a square foot. That's $49 million, but as time goes on, it could be up to 60, perhaps even 70 million. In recent weeks, the developer called the city manager, Mark Jinks, and said that the developer said, quote, that he wasn't so sure about chipping in all this money. But my reaction is it's a contract. He is committed to it. And so we need to have the community's input about where all these monies are going to come from because of obviously the economic development, but let me just say NVTA money from Richmond, Northern Virginia
Transportation
Transportation
right.
Authority, in NVTA. And I'm not sure exactly how much they're chipping in. There's also money that comes in when people spend money at Target or the other stores, that money goes into a special pot of money.
You're running to be the executive of Alexandria.
Yes.
Can you say that you're for the metros? You just how it's to be done, not whether it's to be done. Or would you take no build off the table? I mean, you want to be the executive.
I understand, Tom.
You want to be the executive, not a
two
legislator.
Things. I agree, and I'm generally in favor of mass transit, and I'm leaning towards it. But what we have to do is we have to require that the commitments that were made years ago, I want to know that they're going to be in place so that the taxpayers of the city, I want to know in writing for sure that these millions of dollars are going to be coming in. We did get a $50 million loan from Richmond recently at a loan, right?
Yes.
At 2.17%. And when I heard that, I said, that's great, but that's not like a Pell Grant. A Pell Grant, when you go to college, as we all know, is a grant. Okay. And this is a loan. And so your parents have to pay back, or you have to pay back the loan.
I know he's got other issues, but I
want to stay with transportation.
No, this is great.
But I guess when people run to be the mayor of a city, to be the governor, to be the executive, as opposed to the legislative branch, it would seem you might say, yes, everyone's for Metro, but whether, the federal government, the House just cut $75 million out of the budget for Metro this coming year. But it seems to me you would say, yes, I'm for a new Metro stop in the Potomac Yards. Yes, I wanted it planned either A or B, because I think this is what will happen. If you're going to wait to have the public hearings can inform of you, but I don't know where you start. I still haven't heard from where you start. Being for Metro, Metro general traffic, it's not one thing, but being for a Metro stop is another. Can you say you're for either A or B, that you're inclined to support A or B, or no build? Is it possible no build at all there? I mean, I know you want all the ducks in a row for it, whether the developer puts in the money.
I think it would be more, well, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, it's your turn.
No,
it is your turn. I've talked too long.
No,
I'm just trying to get a more precise answer.
Absolutely. And the people are entitled to that. It's a very expensive proposition. I think that from a fiscal point of view, it's important to know where your ducks are. If your ducks are in a row, to quote you. And I certainly am inclined to support it, but I want to know in writing for sure, why did the developer all of a sudden say he's not so sure? I would like to request that he come in and speak to the council. I would like the mayor to request that, actually.
But that's
And
only a
if I
small
were,
fraction
I
of the
would want to
money.
know for sure that he's going to chip in.
Let the
And-
record show that she is inclined to support it.
Yes,
It's-
but
well-
I think it's really important though to hear from the community and to have that public hearing, and we haven't had that yet. Now, why? So I appreciate what you're saying, Tom, but
But she has a long history as a community activist.
Yes,
You
but I
should
know,
know
but
that's
the-
why
but
this where
the-
this is coming from.
Well, then would you prefer you have a referendum on the Potomac Yard Metro stop?
we are
Or you want the
no,
elected
we
leaders
are
to
we
make a
are
decision?
elected to make these decisions, I believe so, and I'm honored to do so. But if you were sitting with the differential of whether he's going to pay A or B or X or Y, whatever you want to say, this developer. But in addition to that, what is NVTA willing to chip in? Can we get more as a grant, if you will, from the state rather than just a loan, as much as we're grateful for that? How much, how many other, what, I want to see what all those monies mean in real dollars on the table. I think that's the responsible thing.
Your next public debate is, I think, Tuesday with Kerry Donnelly and Mayor Ewell. I think it is May 5th, which is Tuesday. I've just been asking around, and people want to know from Kerry and Mayor Ewell, are you for a metro stop, and how are we going to get it done? Not the details of how it would be done. But anyway, thank you.
Well, they have been.
The other thing people are upset about in transportation is bike lanes, contentious anywhere, including Alexandria. Talk about the King Street bike lanes and why that topic gets people so hot under the collar. Generally, it would appear in opposition to it, at least in community meetings.
Well, we had a.
Aren't you glad you came today?
I am.
Do you ride a bike?
I often borrow a bike, but I can't say that I own a bike anymore. I sold it, but I love bicycling, and I have done a ton of bicycling, and it's great to bicycle in Alexandria. There are a lot of trails, and we are putting more money into the trails in this current budget, which I'm glad about.
Trails are fine, but King Street people don't seem to think that's such a good idea.
Well, we had a lot of community input. It was, as you say, Kojo, very controversial. We will actually be considering it, I believe, in October again to see where we stand, how many people are reading it and using it. People need a way to get from point A to point B, meaning to the King Street Metro. This is the most direct route. I had suggested that the Masonic Temple route, Masonic Temple director said that he would be happy to let us pass through, the bicyclists. So, but what we ended up doing was the bike lanes, and the neighbors, understandably, it was a very tough vote for me, and I don't know about my colleagues, but for me it really was, because the neighbors were losing some parking. Some of them have parking elsewhere, but some of them don't. So that means they have to park a little farther away. But also, if they have visitors, or if they're letting an elderly family member off, or if they're taking mulch out of their trunk or whatever, groceries, this is a quality of life issue. So it was a very tough vote. I'm not sure offhand how many spots were taken. So on the one hand, we want to make it easier for people to cycle to the King Street Metro. Now that stretch of road, it's known that there were many car accidents where cars would veer off, either because they weren't driving safely or maybe they had something to drink. I don't know. But there were cars parked along King Street, and sometimes a car going by too quickly would swipe the car or actually smash a car. We wanted to slow down the traffic. The theory was that if we put bike lanes in and narrow the roadway a little bit, it would signal a slowdown.
Has that happened?
I'm not sure what the outcome of that is. I would like to know, actually, and that's a great question. I'm waiting to hear more feedback and data from our staff. But there's one other thing, and that is that neighborhood actually deserved and finally got a stoplight, which is at Upland and King Street, not to be too specific here. And also,
but if you
there's a
become
sign.
mayor, the bike lanes aren't going anywhere, or would you remove them?
I want to see what the data is with how many people are cycling through. Hold on. Tom,
You know where Tom's going.
I know.
You know where I'm going.
Hold on.
You
I
want to be the
voted for it.
executive. I know, but
I know. Hold on.
Would you take them out now? Just if you had to make a decision now, based on, you can't
No,
always
I would
have all
not
the
take them
information.
out right now because we haven't had the data to show how many people are using it on a daily basis. But it's in general,
something like
it is
40%. Somebody said there's a significant increase in the use of the bike lanes.
Okay,
But
well, we're waiting on data as we speak, and the fact is that that's a good thing to ask because the staff will be providing that. They'll be doing counts, but more than it's not just the slowdown. It's also there's a signal which they deserved anyway. We should have, as a city council, and I just got on the council.
We're running out of time.
We should have had a signal there to say that the speed limit, you're exceeding the speed limit or whatever.
Here's an email that we got
so we can protect our
from
neighborhoods.
John. It's very specific. John says, Silberberg wants to expand the commercial tax base of Alexandria. How does she propose to do this? Through a different property tax rate for commercial properties or shifting city services to other entities such as the creation of business improvement districts?
Well, that's a very interesting question, John. Thank you. So as I stated, I mean, I agree with you that we do have a structural imbalance and we do need to be, in my opinion, very proactive about bringing businesses to the city of Alexandria, even more than we've already done. We need to diversify our economy. And what does that mean? That means bringing those who are entrepreneurs, high-tech workers, medical research, scientists, think tanks to the city, even more than they already have.
But every jurisdiction is trying to do that, whether you're in the 270 corridor in Maryland or whether you're in Prince George's County.
Yeah, but
in the District of Columbia, everybody's going after that market.
But we are a 5-minute drive to National Airport, and we have metro stops, and we are basically 10 minutes without traffic to the Kennedy Center and to Capitol Hill.
I know we're almost out of time. I want to go back to bikes because the executive of leading the city. Are you for bike lanes and making them better and more efficient, or are you worried that bike lanes are interfering with traditional automobile traffic?
Well, I think there's a balance there, and also I think that I want all cyclists to be safe and pedestrians to be safe. I've said that repeatedly, and we absolutely. And there are places where bike lanes are definitely appropriate. We've made a success of them on Commonwealth Avenue, a major thoroughfare in the city, and there are many issues. I think it's great that people are cycling in general, but it's a balance. So sometimes we have sharrows and sometimes we have bike lanes. It depends on the road.
It's not alternative transportation though. It's just it's real transportation.
Multimodal transportation. Okay. Yes.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Alison Silberberg is the vice mayor of Alexandria. She's a candidate for mayor of Alexandria. Thank you so much for joining us and good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
Have you back. Thank you.
Good
luck
on you.
Election's June 5th is when there's the election?
June 9th.
June 9th.
Tuesday, June 9th is the primary, and anyone can vote if they're registered to vote, and that's the way it works. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Tom, sure, we've got to talk to you very briefly about the move that was made in the House of Representatives this week to strike down a D.C. law. This happened for the first time in almost 35 years. What happened?
Well, the conservatives in the House, conservative Republicans in the House. Are there any conservative Democrats in the House? Anyway, they didn't like the city's law. Some of them didn't like the city's law on reproductive health that would ban employers from taking adverse actions against people who are engaged in birth control or abortions or other matters. And so they got the House to pass it to kill this bill. The problem is that it's kind of symbolic in that the deadline for this bill, there's a period of time of 30 to 60 days, whatever it is, to get these bills go into effect unless Congress blocks them. Well, the deadline is Monday, and I don't think Senate's going to have time to do this. And of course, the White House even put out a note saying that this is wrong for two reasons that the House did. One is that the White House agrees with the policy that people shouldn't be discriminated against. And two, it interferes with the city's right to have its home rule and control its own affairs. So I think while this was a nice vote for the House Republicans who can use it in their campaign literature of standing up to the evil District of Columbia, it's not going to mean anything.
Exactly, because if the Senate does it doesn't happen. Joining us now in studio is Kumar Barve, member of the Maryland House of Delegates, Democrat from Montgomery County. He's a Democratic candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Kumar Bharve, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here as always.
Are you for bicycle lanes in the
support-
Congress?
I
No,
I
sorry.
fully support bicycles anywhere they may pop up safely.
It's been a tough week in Baltimore. The
Yeah.
city was exploded in riots after the death of Freddie Gray in police custody. There were also peaceful demonstrations that took place. But the big news, of course, is that Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has decided to bring charges against the 6 police officers, including charges of second-degree murder. I'm interested in your take on this.
Well, first of all, I want to compliment Marilyn Mosby for having an independent investigation and moving decisively. I think that's important for Baltimore. It's important for Maryland, and frankly, it's important for a nation that has been in the grips of a national pandemic almost of the interaction between police agencies and young African American men in urban settings especially. This is a problem that's gone on for quite a while, and I hope that these prosecutions will be the basis of a beginning for some introspection, policy making, and healing, because we cannot allow this sort of thing to happen throughout our nation.
Do you think police officers routinely ought to wear body cameras? This is a growing issue in the country.
And I believe we've passed legislation, and I understand that the governor of our state has committed to signing the legislation. I think that is a solution, but I think that we would be wrong if we think that these are the only solutions. In my view, of course, in the instance of this case, Mr. Gray was in the back of a truck where there were no police officers, and there would have been no police officer cameras present in that situation. So this is an instance where that wouldn't have been a solution. I support it, but we have to take a look at a systemic problem. At the same time, it's important to protect the property and the lives of people. We can't allow lawlessness in our cities either. It simply isn't a solution to the problems of Maryland, to problems of Baltimore, to young men who feel that they are not being treated fairly for property
Well, in the
damaged.
specific neighborhood in which Freddie Gray was born, they found it as a result of a class action lawsuit. There were a total of some 13,000 children who had been affected by lead paint poisoning.
Yeah.
It's a neighborhood that is clearly suffering the effects of poverty. There are those who say this is much bigger than a simple interaction between police and Freddie Gray. This is a part of a city that's been neglected for a long time.
I think that could, yes, I think that's true, and I think that could be said for many urban centers in the United States. I think it's interesting you bring up the issue of lead paint. I'm now the chairman of the Environment and Transportation Committee, Real Property, and the issues surrounding lead paint are front and center in our committee. This year, we actually spent most of our time talking about a 2-year moratorium on fracking and stormwater, but lead paint is an issue that we are intending to investigate over this interim period, what we call the summer, so that we can really begin to relook at that issue, because it's one that's been with us as a nation for too long also.
Yeah, I thought the lead paint issues were decided. I mean, we have city laws in our city, did lead paint.
For prospective, yes, for prospective use, but we still have a legacy problem throughout the United States of properties that have lead paint. And it's something that we have to continue to be to monitor and to act on.
If you have questions or comments for our guest, Kumar Bharve, you can call 800-433-8850. You can also go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream, ask a question or make a comment, or shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show. You have served for 24 years in the Maryland General Assembly.
I have.
Including as majority leader from 2003 until earlier this year. You're now running in the 2016 Democratic primary to succeed Congressman Chris Van Hollen, who will run for the Senate. Why do you want to run for Congress?
Well, I'll tell you that in my observation over the last 24 years as an elected office holder, I have watched as slowly our middle class has begun to evaporate. There has not been a really sound look at the new economy, how new technologies are affecting employment and wages in the United States. Nobody has really focused on the fact that in America today, by some estimates, there are as many as 2 to 3 million jobs that are going unfilled simply because we don't have people who are qualified for them. In Maryland alone, we have 14,000 cybersecurity jobs. that are going unfilled because there aren't people qualified for it. As an accountant myself, as the chief financial officer of an environmental company, I feel that I'm in a perfect position to lead the discussion for deciding how we're going to proceed, because it's important to, of course, raise the minimum wage, and it's important to have a week of paid sick leave, but it's also important to recognize that the middle class of the United States is more hard-pressed than it ever has been, and we have to assertively address this. It's just not good enough anymore to allow the marketplace.
How do you address it?
Well, let me give a specific example. There are skilled, for example, you shouldn't have to go to college in order to be able to support yourself and your family. There are a lot of jobs in our economy. Welding, for example, in high-grade stainless steel environments. These are jobs that pay $90,000 to $110,000 a year, highly skilled. We have to become a nation that is as willing to invest in training for those positions as we should also be willing to invest in Pell Grants and student loans. I mean, we cannot be a nation that can simply spend hundreds of millions of dollars on unnecessary wars in the Middle East while neglecting what is really what ought to be a top priority for our people and our economy back at home.
The National Democratic Party has made a tilt towards the middle classes. It's saying that that's where, that's where the votes are, that's where the money is, that's where the large issues. It seems to me we're almost reliving the 1960s, where we have huge income disparity. We have the police community relations issues. There's still racial issues beyond the policing issues. It just, and their housing is a nightmare for people trying to find a place that they can afford, either whether to rent or maybe to buy. Jobs are non-existent in many communities.
Right.
I just think that the social unrest in the country, to me, is growing a lot faster than I'm hearing solutions.
Well, first of all, the middle class is the center of American society. It should be, we should value it and strengthen it.
What is a middle class person in this country?
I mean, I don't know what the specific statistics are.
About $40,000 a year or something like that?
Something like that. But let me just say something. There are a lot of countries in this world who are engaging in best practices that we need to investigate and in some ways replicate. Germany is a very good example of this. Better than most other countries, they have training policies that are designed to take kids, not necessarily college-bound kids, but take young people and get them ready for the economy and the jobs of the future. The United States has never done that in a coherent fashion. And I think that in this century, with this economy, we need, I mean, Kojo, let me just say this. Nobody has really, in a systematic way, thought about what the effects of artificial intelligence is going to have on the professions and the jobs in the American economy. At least we should begin that discussion so that then we can start to plan out our policies, because right now we are a country where kids cannot afford to pay off student loans because they can't get jobs that pay them enough money to do so. And that's,
do you think the country should do something about forgiving student loans? It's just, if you go bankrupt, the one debt you cannot dismiss in bankruptcy or any other way, I think even if you die, you can't dismiss it, is student loans. It's $1 trillion debt on the country, on the people who you're talking about, who are trying to have jobs, trying to buy homes, trying to buy cars, trying to do everything.
Well, I think we should relook at that issue. But to me, the issue...
what does relook at it mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we have to relook at it to see if we want to change the bankruptcy laws in that instance. But to me, the real issue is employment and wage rates, because at the end of the day, forgiving debts are can be appropriate in a bankruptcy setting, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of people don't go bankrupt. They need to be able to be assured that they can have a job where they can pay their
interest rates could be changed. What should the minimum wage be? Was it $7.25? It's a federal minimum wage.
Right.
The city has raised it to, will be to $11.50. Maryland has raised it, and Montgomery, Prince George's.
Right.
What should it be? Should it be $15?
Well, it should be. I think the 10-10 rate is a fair place to start. I think that indexing to inflation is a sound policy to be considered as well. The specific number, I think that'll have to be the result of debate, but we can't do nothing. Doing nothing is not a solution.
How do you intend to distinguish yourself from your opponents in this race? You consider yourself a pro-business Democrat. What does that mean for Maryland? What does that mean if you were to win a seat in Congress?
Well, let me say that I've had the support of both the business community and the labor community. When I was appointed to be the chair of this committee earlier this year, I was described by the Baltimore Sun as a staunch but practical liberal, and I'm very comfortable with that.
Staunch but practical liberal.
That's the way they described me and Maggie McIntosh, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, and I'm very comfortable with that characterization. The thing that distinguishes me is that I have gotten into leadership, and I've used my position of leadership to do real things for the people of Maryland, whether it is regulating insurance companies and HMOs in the 1990s, whether it was requiring that a certain percentage of the electricity we consume be from renewable sources as a way to fight global warming, whether it's passing as prime sponsor the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act, or being the prime sponsor in the initial push for marriage equality. I've used my position of leadership to solve big, important problems. And in many instances, whether it was HMO reforms in the 90s or renewable energy, a lot of the laws that I've passed in Maryland have been copied around the United States. And so,
indeed, you have a long paper trail, and I'm sure that your opponents will be looking.
It's not a paper trail; it's a digital list. He doesn't want to waste the paper.
That's right. Electrons are so much easier to use.
Your opponents will be looking at it even as we speak. But one of your opponents is State Senator Jamie Raskin. He's taking a strong stand on a number of so-called progressive issues. Where, for instance, do you stand on marriage equality?
I was a prime sponsor of marriage equality.
What about the death penalty?
I voted to abolish the death penalty.
If you win this election...
Actually, let me say, Kojo,
yes.
I actually believe he and I are identical. He's a friend. He's a really terrific guy. I believe that on all those social issues that you have mentioned and others, the DREAM Act, for example, I believe we're identical.
So what's the difference?
The difference is I have had a lot of experience in areas that other people have not had experience in, whether it is forming the Technology Development Corporation of Maryland to help promote high-tech job creation, whether it is renewable energy, as I've discussed.
So your environmental record is far better than Jamie Raskin's, you're saying?
No.
You may have voted for some of the same things, but you've led on them?
Yeah, that's right. For example, my committee, it's first year as a committee chairman, and inside of 90 days, we passed a 2-year moratorium on fracking in the state of Maryland because there hasn't been enough investigation of the health effects and the environmental effects of fracking. I have to tell you, the more I study fracking, the more displeased I am with it as a form of energy. And at a minimum, we need to study the health effects and the ecological effects in Western Maryland.
Is the environment the principal issue in this congressional district?
Well, yes, it's a very important issue for the people of this congressional district. I think protecting the environment, protecting the Chesapeake Bay especially, is of paramount importance to the people of Montgomery County, Carroll County, and Frederick County.
Can I ask quickly about transportation issues? Because that's certainly an environmental issue in terms.
We need to build the Purple Line.
The Purple Line. Where's the governor on that? He's put up a little money to continue the process, but he hasn't said he's still for it yet or not.
And that's correct. And let me compliment the governor for keeping the process alive so that we can convince him that this is extremely important, not just for the environment, but also for economic growth. I would ask anyone who questions the need for the Purple Line to consider this. What would the GDP of the Washington metro area be if the metro had never been built? I submit that our economy would be half the size of what it is today if we didn't have the metro subway system. That's the proper way to look at the usefulness of something like the Purple Line.
The House has voted to cut funding for, the House Committee voted to cut funding for Metro this year, $75 million out. That's half the money that the federal government would do. As Eleanor Holmes Norton pointed out, some rush hours, 70% of the people riding are federal employees or contractors.
It's very unfortunate. One of the reasons I'd like for us to be able to take back the House of Representatives for the Democratic Party is so that we can have more sensible and balanced public transportation policies.
As you mentioned earlier, you have sponsored a lot of legislation, including the one that created the Technology Development Corporation of Maryland back in 1998. Maryland is now hoping to build its tech sector. So is every other city and every other state. how would you plan to sell Maryland?
Well, here's the sales point for Maryland. First of all, very few states have as many PhDs and engineers as we do. We have one of the best workforces for high technology of any of the 50 states. Number two, we are actually producing transit lines that are meant to service this sector. In particular, the Quarter City Transitway, which goes right through the Science City in the Gaithersburg-Rockville area. So between having among the best workforce, actually by some measures the best workforce in the United States, and having transit to get people to and from work quickly, and one final thing, we already have a critical mass of biotech and information technology companies in Montgomery County and in city of Baltimore, in Prince George's now more. We are now, and now more is coming to the Route 29 corridor as well in Silver Spring. We are building a critical mass of workforce and transportation that makes it a perfect landing site for high-tech businesses.
You were the first Indian American state legislator elected in the United States.
Yep.
If you are elected representative of the 8th Congressional District, you won't be the first. You'll be the fourth.
That's right.
You'll be the fourth Indian American elected to Congress.
That's
what
right.
kind of support have you been seeing in the Indian American community?
It's been there's been a lot of excitement.
How big is that community?
Roughly I believe nationally 3 million people.
And in Maryland?
Oh, I don't know the precise number there, and I'm not going to make something up, but it's not insignificant. It's been excitement. People have been very supportive of me, but not just, of course, Indian Americans are excited about me, and I'm Hindu. People from my religious faith are, of course, excited, but, environmentalists, business people, I have a lot of friends in labor. I have many reasons to be excited about Kumar. What can I say?
We here in the district would like to be excited about you because we're frustrated, to say the least, about congressional meddling in our affairs.
Yeah.
The latest being that House voting to strike down the D.C. law which bans discrimination over reproductive rights. As Tom mentioned, that's not likely to go any farther. But what would be your position on D.C. autonomy if and when you reach Congress?
Well, I support full voting rights for the people of the District of Columbia. I think it's unacceptable that the only
Senate and House?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I don't know how we would arrange that, and I don't know where the votes would be for that, but let me just make as a broad principle statement that we shouldn't have a place in America where some Americans can only vote for president and for nobody else. That should make no sense to any American, no matter who they are or where they live or what their political party affiliation is. Now, obviously, the problem is in getting it accomplished. I remember there was some idea of giving an additional congressional seat to some state, which would probably be a Republican. Yeah, Utah.
That's
and then
Tom Davis's proposal.
Yeah, and it seemed like a great idea to me. Anything to get actual voting rights to the people of the district I'll support.
If the district had full autonomy, it would impose a commuter tax on Maryland residents. What would you say to that?
Well, then I think that the state of Maryland and the state of Virginia need to get into negotiations immediately to establish a tax arrangement with the District of Columbia, and maybe we should do it. We should do it sooner rather than later. But to me, voting rights trumps everything else.
You focused much of your legislative work over the years on the environment. You're now chairman of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. You also work with the Business Climate Work Group. How do you maintain that pro-business stance when it comes to the environment?
Let me give you a specific example with respect to stormwater fees. As you know, this is what the Republicans refer to as the rain tax.
Yes.
It's not. It's a tax on storm runoff. As they say, God makes the rain, but we make the runoff. What we did when the bill came to us from the Senate, the bill the environmental community was neutral and the business community really didn't care for it. When it left my committee unanimously, and the environmental community was very enthusiastic about the stormwater bill that my committee enacted, and the business community was supportive as well, because here's what the business community wanted, and it's a very reasonable thing for them to want. They want the fees that they pay to be in proportion to the amount of stormwater runoff that they produce. If a business, they're right now starting to build zero runoff or close to zero runoff buildings. If that's the case, those buildings ought to get a credit against their stormwater fee. That way, not only we're not imposing a fee on somebody who's not causing the problem, but B, we're creating an incentive for businesses to build buildings that don't cause stormwater runoff. And that's a win for everyone. And specifically, it's a win for the business community as well as the environmental community.
As a practical matter, you're 24 years in the House, the delegates. You're fairly powerful in getting things done in the state.
Mm-hmm.
If you get elected to Congress, you'll be a freshman in a 535 member body,
and a member of the minority party as well.
And when I was going to say, and a member of the minority party, where you will not have a lot of chance to get things done for maybe years until you're into that.
Why don't you want this job?
You know what? I don't agree with you. And let me tell you that there are many examples of Democrats who have been successful in spite of that. First of all,
we only have about a minute and a half left.
Chris Van Hollen's been extremely successful in that, and
but he's been there a while.
Well, but he was successful even early in his tenure. But also, Teddy Kennedy found a guy like Orrin Hatch, for example, and worked with him on many issues. My history in the Maryland General Assembly is one of working with people on the other side of the aisle. I disagree with the minority leader on many things, but there are places where we do agree and we do work together, and that's the philosophy I'm going to carry down to Washington with me.
Kumar Barve, he is a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. He's a Democrat from Montgomery County. There might be a Republican or two running in this race against you ultimately. So far, only Democrats have announced.
You know what? I'm not running against anybody. I'm running to represent a community I grew up in.
I can't wait to hear debates with you and Jamie Raskin.
I can't. You know what? I can't wait either. He's a great guy.
It's a long campaign. We're
Kumar
just starting.
Barve is a Democrat from Montgomery. He's a Democratic candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you.
Great to be here, Kojo. Tom, good to see you.
Tomas Sherwood, he is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the... They're playing your music in the background.
Go to NBCWashington.com to read my column on my trip to Cuba.
Put on your headphones. Listen to your music. It's being played in the background.
Very nice.
Tomas was dancing to this last week in Cuba.
No, there were no cell phone pictures of me dancing.
I am Koho Namdi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Namdi Show, our region's African communities respond to the waves of immigrants making the dangerous boat journey from Africa to Europe. Then at 1, the connections between the American space program and the civil rights era, the history of